Welcome back and to 40 Under 40 for the 40% of voters in Vermont under the age of 40. I'm Chuck Gregory, and today we're talking with Ray Rigney, who is on the budget committee with the school district. And I've always had an immense amount of respect and a certain bit of trepidation in working with people who work with numbers because I don't understand them at all. Ray, you're not a Springfield native. Could you give us a little background as to who you are, where you came from, and how you got here?
Well, I was born in Charleston, South Carolina. My father was in the Air Force, so I'm kind of from all over. I was most recently before here from New Orleans, and my family decided to relocate here because my wife was originally from New England, and we settled here in 2017.
Oh, New Orleans seems to have a slightly different school system than Vermont does. How would you compare the two?
Our public school system here is much better than the public school system in New Orleans. My children had to go to private schools when we were there, and that was one of the reasons why we moved up here, was for, safer, more adequate public schools.
Wow. That's amazing. You have kids in the school system right now?
I do. I have 2 that are currently in and 2 that graduated from Springfield High School.
Oh, well, very good. So you have a little stake in the game then.
Indeed.
What influenced you to get into the budget work with the school system?
Originally, a few years ago, I was rather upset over the music and arts program being cut to half-time. And Troy basically challenged me, Troy Palmer, the chairman of the school board, challenged me to be a part of the process if I wanted to have a stake in it.
Wow. And
I chose to take him up on that the following budget season.
Well, how did that work out that season?
It was a steep learning curve. There's a lot that goes into it. It's, numbers are not my thing either.
Oh, geez.
I probably spent half to 2/3 of that first year, year season, doing a lot of listening. And before I even felt like I had absorbed enough to even be able to ask questions that made sense, because it didn't make enough sense to me yet.
Wow.
But by that point, I started asking, Rick, the chief financial officer, a lot of questions, because it's like, okay, I think I know how this is, this fits to this and that fits to that, and how the two fit together. And I finally started ironing it out, and I'm not going to say that I understand all of it, because frankly, it has to be the most convoluted system I've ever come into contact with. And that's not Springfield's fault. That's just the state education financing system.
Well, it probably comes with the profession too. If you're a trained accountant, you almost automatically figure out where this number plugs into that number and what relationships look for, things like that. But
yeah,
what would you say was your biggest surprise that first year when you finally started getting a sense of what it was all about?
Just in general, how massively complex the whole system was.
Well, I can't imagine how volunteers can actually look at a jumble of, how do they tell you to go to work on it?
Well, I guess it all depends on what your motivation is when you go in there. Mine was originally that there were certain aspects of education that I feel are important, and I wanted to help preserve those things. And I also wanted to learn. And then in other cases, you have people that come in because their main goal is they want to either maintain or lower taxes. And
not in Springfield. You've got to be kidding. The town that shoots down its school budget 41% of the time wants lower taxes.
Well, you need to ask yourself, what is your motivation?
Yeah. Well, you go in there because of the arts, the arts and other cutting, budget cutting, and then what do you find when you get there? There's more than just arts.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. What else is there?
Well, there is the consideration of, can you get this budget passed? There's, that does play a part.
Mm-hmm.
You can put together a budget that gives the children the best chance of success, but if what you put in front of the town is going to be voted down,
that's the ball game.
What's the purpose of what you have done?
Yeah. So what are the other things that have to be like the bus schedule, the school meals, stuff like that? What sorts of other costs are involved?
It's funny you mentioned the school meals. The first year I was on there, I did have my children saying, "Get a different meal service. The food stinks." Oh. Yeah.
Listen to your voters.
Yeah. I unfortunately wasn't able to do anything about that, but because the food service was already contracted, but I thought that was amusing.
Yeah.
But the other thing that I learned that was very important, that I've done my best since then to get across to people, is that the number that you see on your ballot is not the number that we in this town have to raise.
Oh, really?
So you walk into your voting booth and you see $40 million.
Mm-hmm.
We pay maybe $9 million of that.
Oh, really? But we're voting on 40 millions.
Because of the law, it is required that we phrase the ballot measure in a specific way.
Uh-huh.
And we can't actually tell you on that ballot that we are only paying X percentage of that with money raised by the town.
Oh my gosh. I have never actually looked at the dollar figure on the school budget. I've always just voted yes, and let it go at that. But there must be a lot of people that look at that 40 million and figure no way.
Well, and a lot of people will argue back that, well, that money still comes out of my tax dollars. Well, actually, maybe no, it doesn't. That money might actually be coming from John Smith in Massachusetts' tax dollars.
Because it's federal?
Because it's federal.
Mm-hmm.
Some of it's federal, some of it's state, some of it's coming from, Nancy Smith in Woodstock, or, Jane Smith in Bennington, or whatever. The point is, the whole state and also federal money comes into play to make up that figure.
Mm-hmm. So we basically have, out of this 40 million, for example, we have 9 million that actually is coming out of our pockets, and we don't consider what that is in terms of, say, a monthly or a weekly expense. We just figure that whole 9 million is going to be me, this time around. I'm not going to vote for that.
Exactly.
And actually, what people pay for property taxes is a lot less than that. Certainly a lot less than $9 million. But
well, and in terms of your contribution or my contribution to the education portion out of your property taxes, if you get a homestead exemption, and this is how it applies to the education portion, it only affects homeowners who make more than $126,600 a year.
Mm-hmm.
If you make less than that, your homestead exemption covers most, if not all, of the education portion of your property taxes.
Wow. Now, that's another thing that I'd never really considered. I always fill out the homestead exemption thing, and for some reason it seems that I never qualify for it. But if people are actually qualifying for the homestead exemption, you'd think that they would be factoring that in when they go in to vote for the budget.
Mm-hmm.
Or,
now, based on the tax rate, it may not cover all of it,
mm-hmm.
But most of the time it will cover all of it. And if it doesn't cover all of it, it covers most of it.
Mm. then it would seem that maybe it's not the homeowners who generally oppose the school budget so
Oh
much
no,
as...
they still do. They still do oppose it because most of them don't know.
Ah, okay. But then there are also the renters who I assume wouldn't qualify for the home exemption.
They aren't paying it at all because they're not homeowners.
Oh, okay. So that seems to be a sort of a public relations problem that the budget committee, has to beat its head against when they're looking at numbers.
This is why I say the whole system is convoluted.
Wow. Jeez. So how does the budget committee what do they prioritize when they're looking at this is what is needed for this program, but this is what the public is not going to accept? How do they work to achieve some sort of medium there?
It depends on what year's budget committee you're talking about.
Oh, really?
Because each year's makeup is different, and each year's committee conducts itself differently because the people involved are all different each year.
So it's a sort of a mini legislature then, where the people who happen to be on it have to politic with one another to balance it.
That's correct.
Wow.
And the main part of what you asked is actually more of a board question than a budget committee question. Our job, as it is presented to us by the board, is we are supposed to look through the budget and come up with recommendations, either to cut or sometimes even to add. We break ourselves up into smaller groups and we attend cost center meetings, which are basically a fancy way of saying we go to the different principals, we go to a special ed meeting. There's also a building management meeting. Now, not all of us attend every single meeting because that would just be kind of overload. But we listen to the budget that Elm Hill or Union Street or Riverside or Springfield High School has presented. And then if, say, we think, well, no, you've proposed way too much money for, new furniture. Why do you need this new furniture? Why do you need this much money for this furniture? And I'm just pulling an example out of the air. And then, the principal would explain, we need this new furniture for this. And the reason it costs this much is because of this. And it's a back and forth. We listen to the principal's presentation of the stuff in their budget and why they need it. We get a chance to ask questions. We could also say, you're only budgeting this much money for, this, or, just whatever. Why aren't you asking for more? Don't you need more money for that? And that, so we can actually say you should be spending more money.
Does that happen very often, though?
This year, surrounding the subject of paras, it actually did.
Oh?
Because we're very short on paras right now.
Oh, you want to go deeper into that?
We can, unless you had other things you wanted to go to first.
When I'm thinking of paras, what I'm thinking of is they cost money, and obviously they're needed, evidently, for individual education plans required.
There's different kinds of paras, though.
Oh, there are.
There are special ed paras that have certifications for dealing with, different aspects of special ed. And those are often, required positions that we have to post because a student has been put on an IEP and their IEP calls for a specific service. And if we don't have someone in the district who is certified to provide that service, then we're required by the federal government to post for that position. Because IEPs and 504 plans constitute a federal contract. It's binding. And we have to provide that service.
Okay. And if you provide that service, then you have to provide the money for it.
That's correct.
Okay.
Now, I'm not going to go into that because I'm not 100% sure, but I think there's some repayment that goes into that, but don't hold me to that.
Mm-hmm.
But the main point is, if an IEP calls for a service and we don't have someone who's certified in that, we have to post a position.
Uh-huh.
That doesn't mean we're going to end up being able to fill that position.
Oh.
But we have to post for it. We have to post it and try to get someone to fill that position.
So that's as far as the federal law goes. You have to post for it.
And we have to figure out a way to provide that service. If we can't get someone to fill that position, then we have to contract out to someone else through, say, HCRS.
Ouch.
Or, which is going to cost more.
Mm-hmm.
I mentioned HCRS because I know that's one of the partners with the schools.
I said ouch for private contractors.
Yes,
in
but
general.
we're required to provide those services.
Okay.
Then there are also voluntary postings for paras, because not all paras are special ed paras.
Oh.
Some paras are just in there to help with, help the teachers out.
And and the administration has determined these are required, and you've determined that they are. You agree with the administration that they're required,
or that they're needed.
Yeah. Okay. And therefore the money has to come from someplace, and this is where you wind up with a problem.
Well, and in one of the recommendations that we ended up making, and it was a hard one, because ideally, because of the need for them, we would love to budget the number of paras that the principals and teachers are saying that they need.
Mm-hmm.
But we have several para positions that have been posted for quite some time that haven't been filled, and this budget contained 5 more voluntary ones in addition to the ones that were required to post, and we just could not see the fiscal responsibility in posting 5 new ones in addition to a whole bunch of them that have been posted for quite some time that haven't gone filled. So we cut that because our feeling was, let's fill what's been posted first and then come back and post more.
Wow.
Because there's just no line out the door of applicants to fill these positions.
Okay. So what would cause people to apply to be paras in order to fill that shortage?
According to what one of the principals told us when we asked what the problem was in terms of people, because people are applying and they are interviewing, and then they're taking positions elsewhere. So what I took from that is we need, when it comes time for contract negotiations with the teachers union or the paras union or whichever union they fall under, we need to get the ability to offer more money.
Well, that's reasonable. Yeah.
Because right now we can't. One of our ideas was to take the money that was in those positions and divide it up amongst the open positions that we had already and try to increase the salaries, and we were told that violated union rules, that we couldn't do that.
Oh, really?
Because that was our idea. Hey, sweeten the deal. But the salaries are under contract with the union.
Oh, I see. Okay. But they could be renegotiated at contract time with the unions if that were possible.
Exactly.
On the other hand, having them paid at the current level would certainly be beneficial for the people who get employed. So, I can't fault them for...
Oh, no, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. I'm totally in favor of that.
The situation right now, though, is for lack of paras, certain needs are not going to be filled, whether or not this particular budget gets voted in.
Exactly.
It seems to me that there should be some way of presenting a maximum budget to the voters in terms of what it means to them personally in their paycheck. I like to use the example when the chief of police was probably 10 years ago, talking about getting 4 more cops in Springfield. Somebody asked him, how much would that cost? And he figured, about $260,000, $250,000 for 4 cops for 1 year. But somebody figured out that $260,000 split among the 3,200 homeowners in Springfield was a cup of coffee from Dunkin' Donuts once a week for the year. Which really cuts $250,000 down to size for a taxpayer.
Exactly. When you look at it as a lump sum, it seems like a lot, but when you stretch it out, it really isn't.
Yeah.
But people see that lump sum and they freak.
Yeah.
It's just like, it's historically, if you go into the voting booth and the voters see a per pupil increase of 10% or greater, they say, forget that, they vote it down. But if they see a per pupil increase of 9.75, they're more likely to vote it through. What's the actual difference between 9.75 and 10.1%? It's negligible.
Yeah.
But they see a bigger number and they freak.
Well, that's what J.C. Penney figured out 150 years ago. You charge somebody $5, they won't pay it. You charge them $4.99, they will pay it.
Yeah.
And I guess it's just a human trait. But it seems to me that maybe somebody ought to undertake, the idea of, hey, everybody, we're going to have a blowout budget next year. This is what it's going to cost. This is what it'll be doing for the students. But this is what the increase is for you, and it's a cup of coffee a week or whatever.
And see, even in terms of your taxes, one of the things that was mentioned by Rick, the chief financial officer, at the last board meeting was we could increase this budget by $5 million, and based on the numbers that we've been given from Montpelier, it's not going to make any difference in your taxes.
Wow.
Your tax rate will not go up a cent if we increased the school budget by $5 million from where the current proposed budget is at.
Wow.
So we could go from 40 million to 45 million, and it ain't going to affect your taxes. Mm-hmm. But the number will freak you out.
My gosh. So there is a messaging. Maybe somebody in town will be able to take it on as a project. Yeah. I'm curious about these, going out to visit to the various places and hearing their explanation of why they're presenting the budget requests that they are. Do members of the budget committee have any particular specialty? When somebody talks to me about furniture, I have no idea, of amortization costs or depreciation or the quality that's needed, anything like that. And if a principal says to me, we have to replace these chairs, best I can do is take them at their word, because I have no idea what they're talking about. But there must be others who do know what, say, the supervisor of maintenance is talking about when he's talking about biodegradable surfactants.
I mean, from what I could tell, most of the people on the committee came from a pretty varied background.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I just picked furniture out of the air. I don't know if anybody had any, particular, specialty in that.
I did the same with biodegradable surfactants. So,
yeah, I mean, I know we had some private business owners. We had a teacher. I'm a stay-at-home parent. It's very varied backgrounds.
Yeah. Well, I've been in situations myself where I've been trying to pitch somebody on the idea of doing this or that or the other, and realizing that this person really has no idea of where I'm coming from, and there's no way I can explain it to make them understand from my point of view, but they're still willing to go along with me nevertheless, which I think is evidence for the existence of a God or something. But there are also people. There are voters that I've talked with who have looked at, say, the teachers' union as nothing but a bunch of lazy thugs, So how does the budget committee get a sense of where a presenter is coming from in terms of factual honesty and forthrightness and objectivity?
again, I guess it depends on which budget committee, year you're talking
So
about.
it's all an interpersonal thing.
Yeah.
You basically have people who need to understand a situation and people who are trying to present the facts in a situation. And if both of them are reasonably competent, it will work out.
Yeah, there have been years on the budget committee where you had people who came in who really wanted to learn how the system worked, and then you had people who came in and they only wanted to lower taxes. They said they wanted to know how things worked, and then when people who had been here before tried to explain to them how it worked, they had no interest in listening.
Oh my heavens.
And the effectiveness of the budget committee bears out in its results, depending on which one of those two situations you have.
Wow. So the product that you produce is done by vote or consensus or
It's by consensus, and if there's an issue that the majority rules on something and you have someone who is adamantly opposed, then that has to be mentioned in the recommendation. And as was the case this year, the person or people, or in this case person, can actually present a dissent to the board.
But the board obviously has the final say.
The board has the final say. I have never, in any of the years that I've been involved with this, seen the board not take what the budget committee has to say into consideration. But that doesn't mean that they're going to go with that.
Does the budget committee have the authorization or the right to recommend a radical sort of proposal? The one that I like using is if the senior class were taking an annual trip down to Disney World every year to celebrate, and the budget committee said, 5-6 flags down in Agawam is going to be sufficient,
I mean, in theory, the budget committee can recommend anything.
Oh, okay.
I mean, that doesn't mean that it would necessarily be advisable, but the budget committee can make any recommendation it wants to,
as long as it's based on dollars and cents, or can they throw in other considerations as well?
They can throw in. I mean, they can throw in anything they want to. It just doesn't necessarily mean that the board's going to do it.
Okay.
I mean, from my own personal experience, I think the only thing on the budget this year that I have immense problem with is this new transition that they're doing.
What transition is that?
So it's something that I agree with in part and in principle, but I don't agree with how they're going about it.
Yeah.
So right now, the pre-K program is located on the second floor of the tech center, which is attached to the high school. Because, for several reasons, not the least of which is lack of bathroom facilities, it's limited to only 2 pre-K classrooms up there. And the desire is to expand so that everyone in Springfield has access to 4K pre-K.
Okay.
And the plan that is in place right now is to, by next year, move the pre-K to Elm Hill, which is currently a kindergarten through 2nd grade school.
Okay.
There's not enough room there to make it a pre-K through 2nd grade. So the 2nd grade is going to be moved to Union Street, which is currently a 3rd grade through 5th grade school. There is not enough room there to make it a 2nd grade through 5th grade school. So they want to move the 5th grade to Riverside and make Riverside Middle School a 5th grade through 8th grade school. That's where I have a problem.
How's that a problem?
5th graders are not emotionally or, physically ready to be interacting with 7th and 8th graders.
Oh.
And as of right now, they have no plan set up for how that's going to be managed.
Ooh.
The superintendent has resigned and gone on to an indefinite period of leave. The CFO is currently the acting superintendent. The principal of Union Street put his resignation in the day after this plan was voted through.
Oh my gosh.
So we now only have, 3, he hasn't left yet, but, by the time this plan gets put into action, no idea whether we're going to have a new principal yet for that school.
Mm-hmm.
And they're trying to push this plan through by next year, when even if we had all of the positions filled for leadership, it really shouldn't have been pushed through this fast. It should have been planned to be implemented in FY 26-27, not FY 25-26. You just don't push through something this massive that quickly.
And
not
the board has already voted to
they've already voted to implement this.
Wow.
Not to mention, I don't care how many programs the 5th grade is going to have access to at Riverside. Do we, and I'm not painting every middle schooler with this brush. I'm simply saying that there are going to be instances of bullying, because there's instances of bullying no matter where your kids are. Do we really want to allow it to be 8th grade to 5th grade bullying?
Wow.
Right now, the current wisdom in education is suggesting moving 9th graders down to 8th graders and 7th graders, because emotionally 9th graders are more like 8th graders than they are like 10th graders.
Oh my heavens.
It is not suggesting moving up from the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
This is and if this is what they think of as a well thought out plan, then the charge of the Light Brigade was a well thought out military operation.
Well, certainly it seems that part of the problem here is that the board, voted on this or set it all up and really got in favor of it, and then you had major personnel misfortunes happening, with the superintendent and the principal. And
the superintendent resigned at the beginning of the year.
Oh.
So they already knew they were going to be rolling this out with, they were going to be planning this with a superintendent who was leaving and rolling it out with a brand new superintendent, assuming they can even have one hired by then.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got no unity of command. That's a recipe for disaster.
Wow. The only thing I could think of is, how would you like to be the person to be put in charge of integrating, the 5th graders into Riverside?
I think Nate McNaughton is an amazing principal, and I think that he'll do the best job that could possibly be done with the situation. My problem has nothing to do with any lack of faith in the personnel. I think that Riverside has an amazing, staff of educators.
It just seems to me that
I don't think that God himself could make that situation work.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm a bit of an optimist, and I think if there were someone there that Nate knew he could rely on to take care of the entire transition in a competent fashion, that would help.
I think they'll do a great job of handling problems once they've already happened. But once they've already happened, the damage is done. That's
the big issue there.
My problem is, my issue is prevention. You're going to have 5th graders with 7th and 8th graders together on the bus. The bus driver is driving the bus. They're going to be together, outside the school before they get let in.
Mm-hmm.
Then, from what I've been given to understand, they're going to be mixed together in T3 classes.
Really?
And no. I can tell you flat out, when my daughter reaches 5th grade, if this is the setup we have, she will not be attending Riverside.
Wow.
And I offered a counter proposal for an alternative plan that was simply ignored.
Oh, that's too bad. Wow.
It would have gotten the pre-K out of the tech center and it would have kept the 5th grade away from Riverside.
Did it have any sort of effect on the budget?
I have no idea what it would have done to the budget, honestly, and it would have had to be rolled out in FY 26-27.
Oh.
But this plan should have been too.
Uh-huh.
My plan was to make Union Street and Elm Hill both pre-K through 5th grade schools.
Uh-huh.
Split everything down the middle.
Sort of makes me wonder why the school board wasn't able to say, okay, we can just kick this back another year rather than do it now.
I think that they had made their decision and they were more concerned about not being wrong than they were about being right.
My gosh. Well, I guess the best we can do is get people in town and talk about this and see whether or not something better can't happen from it. I don't know. Jeez.
I'm in a position now where unfortunately I have to vote against what I helped create.
Wow. All I can say is best of luck with that. I'm a creature of habit, and I'll probably be voting for the budget anyway, but I certainly would like to see this issue resolved better than it has. So
I hope to sit across the table from the school board after it's voted down and ask them if we can come up with something that doesn't include this transition.
Oh, well, that's a good I would not have thought of that. Yeah. Well, given the record of the Springfield voter, you probably have a good chance of doing exactly that.
I would have preferred they simply not include this, and then I could help campaign to get it voted through the first time.
Yeah.
Which is what I had originally planned to.
Wow.
But things don't always turn out the way we expect.
Okay. Well, I guess we can wrap it up at that then, Ray. Yeah. Is there anything else you'd like to tell the audience before we shut down here?
Join the budget committee. Learn how the process works. And, be part of the solution.
No. Thank you very much. And listen to them, guys, okay? That's it for 4040. Have a good day. Thanks a lot, Ray.
Thank you.